right, gang, so we're all set, and Scal's going to stripe that wee little panel, and he's going to pal it up. What kind of paint are you working with?
We're using One Shot today.
And you got 2 colors set up ready to go?
No, I just got the one color. It's an old.
Oh, that's an old pad.
Yeah,
okay.
It's an old palette. I recommend using, me personally, I use a gloss magazine, and I cut them in half, and they just don't absorb the paint as much. You're able to just tear a sheet off at a time. Okay, and the other thing I wanted to talk about was these thinner cups are stainless steel, so they're not going to rot on you. They're the plastic, you might dissolve some plastics over the other with your thinners, and what that is the plastic that's in your thinner, then you're paleting plastic in your thinner, you're putting debris in your paint. And I just don't recommend
these cups are kind of like when you order mozzarella sticks, that's what your marinara sauce comes in.
Correct. They're condiment cups you can get at Walmart.
Oh, I didn't know. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, just stainless steel condiment cups.
How much is how many do you get and how much are they?
I think that you get 4, they were 4 for $1 at the dollar store.
Oh, well, that's not bad. So 25 bucks a throw.
Yeah,
25
they might be
cents.
a couple bucks at Walmart or whatever. You can also buy them in quantity, which I was able to do one year off of a guy out from Utah, Casey Christian, got me a box of them out of a restaurant supply store.
Huh. So you can just keep washing them out and using them again.
Washing them out, washing them out. And as you can tell, I've got numerous amounts of them. Every time I see them at Walmart, I buy them. You know, because after a while you get crusties around the side, and unless you're cleaning, I just toss it away because I got a new one. But that's what I recommend, is using a condiment cup, something hard that the thinner is not going to eat. So a Dixie cup is not going to work good for you. And if you're using Dixie, always use non-wax Dixie cups.
Oh, there's a good tip.
It'll eat the wax off the cup, and then it's in your paint. So what we're doing is I am using One Shot out of plastic bottles because I store them in my kit. Like
why do you use a plastic bottle? I see, and you have all of your bottles right here upside down.
Correct.
Now I know I covered this before with another striper. I think Gary the Brush, but.
The reason I personally do it is I don't get a skin on my cans. I can put more color in my box compared to a can, and I was losing so much paint and skin that I just started going to these peat bottles. And then by storing them upside down, it's not allowing any air to get in there to form a skin.
Now, a paint bottle like that, is it a special kind of plastic?
Yeah, it's a peat. P-E-T-E bottle.
A peat bottle. Where does one acquire a peat bottle?
You can order them online. There's Kafka sells. There's a number of other companies, but they're clear, hard plastic. The thinner in the paint will not eat them. And on the very bottom of it, you will see a symbol, a little triangle, and then underneath that, it'll have the letters P-E-T-E. Or P-E-T.
I don't know if I'm going to get that to focus, gang.
But you're looking for a peat bottle. And you can get them from numerous different suppliers. I know Kafka sells them. You can get them through Mr. J on the East Coast. Probably the Airbrush Action out in California. You can get them. You can also get them from Uline, which is a manufacturer, sells products of all kind of industrial boxing and stuff like that.
I actually use the Uline catalog to palette my brush on.
Very good catalog, high gloss paper, very good. So, matter of fact, I got a couple brand new ones.
But Uline, Mr. J, Airbrush Action, they all have websites.
They all have websites.
So if you Google that, you'll find it.
If you research plastic paint bottles to start with, boom, it'll just come up. You'll have all kinds of options. So. The price varies, the size varies, and then what I do is I put a marble inside my bottle.
Okay.
So when you shake it, the marble
mixes
it up.
It's like a homemade spray can, so to speak.
Except it's a pour.
There you go.
Okay, so we just put a little bit of paint on our palette.
I'm going to zoom in on your palette there and show us how you load up your brush.
Okay.
Mr. Left-handed Southpaw.
The biggest key about your brush, since I store in oil, this cup is strictly for cleaning, okay? And it got all the oil out of my brush.
Will the oil fisheye the paint?
Oil will fisheye your paint.
And what are you using to oil your brushes?
40 weight oil.
Motor oil?
Motor oil.
Okay.
And the reason I do that is because if I ever ran out back in the day...
That's really old school.
You couldn't find a bottle of Neat's Foot. I couldn't find a place that sold One Shot brush conditioner. No. Long story short.
But you can find oil everywhere.
Every gas station's got 40 weight. So
That's
that's
right.
what I use. I used to use trans at one time, but that's too thin. And then I did a lot of work outside, too hot, and it started just leading the brush too much. So 40 weight, I've been happy with.
All right.
So then my other cup here is clean thinner. And for what we're showing here, you could use your mineral spirits. You could use whatever thinner you're going to use for the product. Today,
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Today I'm using naphtha, and we discussed that earlier, which you can just get at your hardware store. And I load up the brush to where it's just slowly moving.
Now,
Back and forth, load it up.
Right.
And on that last one, I slightly turn till I get to my tip.
all right, let me zoom
And
back
then-
in, and I want you to do that again.
Okay, ready?
Sure, go ahead.
Back and forth, and I slowly turn that last one to where it's just on my tip.
Right, because I didn't get to see that good, let me move a wee bit.
Okay?
And just one more time for the people in the cheap seats.
Okay. So palette back and forth, and on that last pull, just slightly turn to your standing or up, and you're on your tip.
Okay,
Okay.
let me get back over here.
On a sword brush, the piece of wood from the handle, and right here in the ferrule, the wood is always on the left, and it's straight on the top, curved on the bottom.
Right,
Okay. So now, me using naphtha, she sets up quick.
now let me ask you before you hit the panel with the brush. I notice you have a little easel.
Right.
I know I work in my lap a lot of times, or I have like a stand-up workbench in my garage, and I work standing up. I see a lot of guys work on an easel like that, and that kind of messes me up. That works good for you?
Yeah, I mean, the longer you practice, the more you paint, you're going to learn.
So it always comes back to however you feel comfortable.
Whatever's comfortable. I stand up,
Okay.
whatever. But what I'm going to tell you, it's going to make 100% of sense. You got to remember, you can't rotisserate a car sitting in the parking lot or in your shop to get to where your hand's comfortable. So you're going to have to practice in all kinds of conditions. The reason I'm using an easel today is because you're filming, and we're trying to give them some accessibility. Otherwise, this piece I'd probably lay down and stand up.
Right,
And
okay.
paint down, you know,
All right.
or if it was a bigger panel, we'd have it on the easels over on the wall.
I have striped in my lap and on a table like this so much
Right.
that if I do a car for someone, I do find it difficult because I'm not used to working vertical.
Correct. And then it's just, the more you do and the more you practice, it doesn't matter at what angle, you're going to be proficient in where you're setting your hand, where you're going to set the brush, and then no matter where you're at, you're going to get it. Okay, it's just a practice thing.
It's always practice. Everything
Everything's
comes back to practice.
So what I'm doing here is I've got it up right on this easel just so you could easily film this and show.
Now I'm going to do like a long shot and show you going through it so people can see the left hand working
Okay.
and how you do it.
Okay.
And I'll go from side to side and move around you. So
Okay, so being left-handed, I'm starting on the right so I don't get my hand in the paint. I set my tip down, I have my acceptable width that I'm going for, and right before I get to the end, I lift up, okay? Then
All right.
with just the tip, you can go back and correct your point. Now the other tool I wanted to show you, which I didn't before, is called an eraser. And we all know the kids back in the day, we remember this kind of eraser.
wait one sec. I'm going to zoom in and show everybody that first line.
Okay.
All right, now I'm coming back. Put up
Okay.
your eraser.
This is the school eraser we all remember.
Right,
Now remember the chisel that's on this eraser?
right.
Okay.
That's going to come in handy right now.
It is, but what I'm going to show you is now they've made what they call a paint eraser. Mac makes them, a couple other guys make them, and it still has the chisel on this end.
I hold it more toward, right there is great, right behind that white barrel.
Okay.
Try and get a good, it's a good
There you go.
focus.
So this one's chiseled like you have on that eraser,
Huh,
just a little finer.
so it's
On
got
this-
that handle on it, which makes it,
On this end, it's just a point.
okay.
Okay, so what we call it is hot dogging. You got past the point that you wanted to be. You set the eraser down and you push into your paint, and it will move the paint back in.
All right, let's see that.
Okay, well, let me exaggerate a little bit. Okay, so that was the point I wanted to stop at anyway. So let's say I just got a little bit past it.
Okay,
Okay, so then you take your eraser and you push back into it.
Huh, that's
Ta-da!
amazing.
It's done. And then you make sure you clean off your end so you're not sparing it on the next time you use it. Okay, so we have that part.
That's 2 things I learned from Scal today.
Okay, so I'm lightly coming to a point. I'm just using the tip of my brush, and I slowly pull down and got my width that I want. And I just pull the line all the way to the end. At the end, I came lifted up, and as you can see by the grease pencil, I went too far again. Go back, take your eraser, push up to it.
Huh.
Done.
I would pull just so far.
Yeah, and then go back and tip it.
No, I would do this. I'd get so far, I'd pull down,
Right.
and then I'd start from there and pull into the line I just did.
Well, you can do it that way too.
Well, there's no wrong way, but yeah, that's how I got around that. But I'm gonna go out and buy that cool little paint eraser you got now.
I mean, it's just a thing, you know, one little tool, and it gets back to that point of which brush do I enjoy using more? You know, what style do I like doing? Come down, and as you're rotating, you're slowly turning the brush. Pull up at your ends. And believe it or not, if you turn this brush over, you palette it out and you have that very, very fine tip on the end. If you would turn it over, you could actually do something so tiny you can barely see with the same brush. So I'm trying to work from the point that I'm keeping my hand out of my paint, where me being a left-hander, I'm starting from the right side. And at this point, my guidelines that I've drawn out are a starting point, the idea. But as you're painting, you might see something you like a little better.
So I see it's like you say, because you're left-handed, you're starting from the right and you're working the left. And you said you do that when you do lettering also.
Correct.
I notice it's like you're working in like a quadrant. You're going from left to right and then down.
Right.
It's very interesting.
Well, that way I'm trying to be symmetrical, and it's easier to be symmetrical if you go from one right to the other side constantly. But if you start all this way, now you're going to try to train the hand to do the same thing on the other side, and you might not get it every time. This way, you're training your hand as much as possible in a movement. The left.
It's kind of like body English.
Right, your left, when you're training your hand, no matter if you're left or right, you're going to be able to pull this way the way you want it, but you're doing, this hand went this way, now you're doing it upside down and the other way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you have to train your hand to kind of pull those lines. And the best way to do it is right next to each other.
It's like definitely the way you have it all pounced out and penciled in, it makes it look a lot easier.
Well, it gives your eye something to adjust to, and until you've done it enough times to do, all of a sudden just pull a line without seeing it, it's going to be quite challenging.
Everything starts with like a cornerstone or
Right,
a beginning from somewhere.
Yeah, this is just, it's like, you remember back when you were in grade school?
I can't remember that far back.
Oh, well, you can at least try. Mrs. Jones gave you that lettering paper that had 4 lines on it for
and
cursive.
that giant #2 pencil.
Right, and the cursive, so you knew you had to be this high for uppercase, this high for little. That's what all those lines were for.
That's a good analogy.
And then when you got to become an adult and you have your cursive better, all you needed was the bottom line. You didn't need all those lines. So this is all you're doing is training yourself to do a little bit better.
I'm trying to.
Actually, this is pretty sloppy compared to what I normally do, so I apologize. My work is usually a lot tighter than this, but I'm trying to show you this in a time frame of a lesson here.
You can just see how you like giving that little twist
Just a little bit.
to manipulate the bristles to do what you need it to do.
The other thing is that once you get your palleting down, you figure out how to load the brush, then another thing you'll start seeing and noticing is the pressure control of putting the weight on the brush.
To keep the consistent line thickness?
Because you can take the tiniest brush in the world, and if you put all this weight on it, it'll become the fattest brush in the world. And you can take a very fat brush, and if you barely put any weight on it, you can pull a really, really thin line.
So some guys may make a nice thin line with a number 1 brush.
Oh, absolutely.
And some guys could use a 0 and make a thick line.
I've known quite a few and seen it, where the guy has been a semi-paint striper, and he's pulling 1/4 inch, 3/16 lines all day long, and with that same brush, he can put his initials less than a 1/16 of an inch.
Wow.
And a stroke that's a 32nd with that same brush. So
that's amazing.
It's all brush control, putting the weight in it.
So I guess you should, getting a couple brushes like a 00, a 0, and a 1, and practice with them and find the brush that you like that works with you.
Right, exactly. I would think.
So somebody, you can't like have someone tell you, oh, you got to use a number 0 brush, and you might be better off with a number 1.
You might be, but
you just never know until you try.
Yeah, depending on the weight, but I think it's harder to learn the lightness than it is the weight of putting on the brush. Me personally, but I would think a 1 or a 0 would be a perfect starter brush for most people, for the simple reason they're not going to be working on tremendously big items. So
yeah, I think most people are going to be doing a panel like you're doing right now to get started.
A 0 to a 00 will probably work best for them to start with. I got my background a little too fresh this morning.
So that's pretty much the pounce pattern that you have. So these are all the lines from the pounce pattern you got.
Correct.
Except for the outside border you put on
Right,
there.
and then I think we changed this loop here.
Right.
And we extended this one down.
Okay.
But other than that, it's pretty much the same as my drawing.
Now I gotta ask, like I saw you got a little whoop-de-doo or a smudge there.
Yep, got a little smudge.
Are you gonna work that toward your advantage or clean it off?
Well, like you've been told and I've been told, if you make a mistake one place,
all right, let me get over here and
make the same mistake on the other.
Make the same mistake.
Yeah.
So let me get in there on my camera.
So what I'm doing is I'm gonna create a save, or attempt to.
So you're gonna own that.
Yeah, I'm gonna own it. Anybody who says they don't make mistakes doesn't try hard enough.
Well, imperfections make things perfect. Isn't that something Confucius said?
I think so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend it beyond my fupa and do the same on the other side.
And there you go.
And we've kind of hidden it, but she's kind of thick up top with the ink. So, paint, dab a little bit in.
Well, I didn't see that coming.
We'll fill this part in. So the other thing I've noticed on this one, since I was jerking and rushing and not paying attention, I don't really care for the top, piece in the middle much. So we'll let it set up just a hair longer. I'm using naphtha again, so I get a little more flash time out of it.
And naphtha, you can get that from a hardware store or a home improvement store.
Anything. It's just the next step up from our mineral spirits. That's all it is. So we pretty much corrected our little mistake. We're still not perfect, but I don't care for this part right here. I've got more radius down here at the bottom than I do over on this side. So with my stapello, I come back in and I'm going to try kind of lightly draw what I like better for that radius. So that means on this side I'm going to have to come in a little bit.
Oh, to try and kind of even it out?
Kind of. Try to.
No, I got you.
I think that might work.
You see, gang, how he twists that brush to get that turn?
I'm rotating and lifting it up at the same time so I can get to that point. And we'll just chisel it off right there. So this one I'm going to take a little bit here. And that goes back to training the hand for the left to the right. So you can see I'm still working and practicing that training of the hand. A little better. And we let that set until we can get a good shape to it, then I can pull my next color.
Alright, so I guess we're going to give that how long would you say you're going to let that tack up?
Probably about 15 to 20 minutes with naphtha, maybe a hair longer. Depends on your humidity that you're working with. The more humid it is, the longer it's going to take. It's all trial and error, practice, practice, practice. Certain colors will dry quicker than others. So.
All right, gang, so we're going to let that dry for 15, 20 minutes, Scal says, and for you it'll be a couple seconds. So run to the bathroom now and do what you got to do. You know, get a fresh yoo-hoo or whatever, and you know, we'll be back in a few seconds. But just hit pause and wait 15 minutes so you can experience what we're experiencing. How's that? So we'll be right back, next chapter.